So I wrote my ex a thank you letter last night. Yeah, you heard that right. I thanked the guy who completely destroyed me 6 months ago. I know that sounds totally insane, but hear me out. I'm gonna tell you exactly why I went from crying myself to sleep every single night to actually being grateful he walked out on me. And if you've ever been dumped by someone you thought you'd spend forever with, this is gonna sound really familiar at first. But trust me, by the end of this, you're gonna understand why sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing. Let me start with where I was 6 months ago, because honestly, I was a complete mess. Picture this. I wake up one random Tuesday morning, thinking it's just another normal day. We'd been together for 3 years. 3 whole years. I had our whole life mapped out in my head, you know? We were supposed to move in together that fall. I'd already started looking at apartments online, saving up for furniture, the whole thing. Then he sits me down that evening and just ends it. No warning, no fight the night before, nothing. Just, I don't think this is working anymore, and I need space to figure myself out. I remember staring at him thinking this had to be some kind of joke. Like, who does that? Who throws away 3 years over coffee on a Tuesday? But he was dead serious. He packed up his stuff that night, which wasn't much since we didn't live together yet, and that was it. Just gone. I spent the first week calling in sick to work. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone every 5 minutes, thinking he'd text me saying he made a mistake, that he'd come back and we'd laugh about this whole crazy thing. But that text never came. You know what's really messed up? I started blaming myself for everything. Maybe I was too clingy. Maybe I talked about the future too much. Maybe I should have been more exciting, more spontaneous, more whatever he wanted me to be. I went down this whole rabbit hole stalking his social media, which was torture, by the way. Don't do that to yourself. I'd analyze every single post, every story, looking for signs that he missed me or regretted his decision. My friends kept telling me I'd be better off without him, but I couldn't see it. All I could think about was what I'd lost. Our Saturday morning routine. The way he'd text me random funny stuff during the day. How we'd spend hours just talking about nothing and everything. I felt like half of me was missing. Like I didn't even know who I was without him. I'd been we for so long that being just me felt impossible. The worst part? I kept making excuses for him. He's just confused. He needs time. He'll realize what he gave up. I was living in this fantasy where he'd come back and everything would go back to normal. But here's what I didn't realize yet. About 2 months in, something started shifting. I was still crying, still missing him like crazy, but I began noticing little things, like how quiet my apartment was now. And I don't mean lonely quiet, I mean peaceful quiet. See, he was one of those people who always had to have noise. TV, music, podcasts, whatever. I couldn't even think straight half the time when he was around because there was always something playing in the background. For the first time in 3 years, I could just sit in silence, and it felt good. Then I realized I'd been watching whatever he wanted to watch on Netflix for months. I'd completely forgotten what shows I actually liked. So I started watching this documentary series I'd been wanting to see forever. And you know what? I loved it. He would have hated it, called it boring, but I was totally hooked. Small stuff, right? But it was adding up. I started cooking meals I actually wanted to eat instead of trying to find things we'd both like. I reorganized my closet and found clothes I'd stopped wearing because he'd made some comment about them. I even changed my hair. Nothing dramatic, just back to the color I'd had before I met him. Each little change felt like I was finding pieces of myself I'd forgotten existed. But the real wake-up call came about 3 months after he left. I was hanging out with my sister, and she said something that completely floored me. She was like, "You know, you seem more like yourself again. You're actually laughing at things that are funny instead of just laughing when you think you're supposed to." That hit me hard, because she was right. I'd been performing for him without even realizing it. Not in a fake way, but I'd been editing myself, you know? Toning down parts of my personality that I thought might annoy him or make him think I was too much. I started thinking about our relationship differently. Not through the lens of missing him, but actually looking at what it had been like day to day. He'd make these little comments about my friends. Nothing mean, just stuff like, "Do you really need to talk to them every day?" Or, They're kind of dramatic, don't you think? And slowly, I'd started seeing my friends less and less. Or how he'd get this look on his face whenever I got excited about something he thought was silly. Like this book I'd been obsessed with, or when I wanted to try that new yoga class. He never said I couldn't do those things, but his expression made it clear he thought they were dumb. I'd been shrinking myself to fit into his world without even noticing. Once I realized all this, I got pissed. Really pissed. How dare he make me feel like I was too much when I was actually not enough. Not enough of myself, anyway. I went through this whole angry phase where I wanted to text him and tell him exactly what I thought about how he'd treated me. Not the breakup part, that was his choice. But the way he'd slowly made me smaller during our relationship. I wrote probably 10 different messages I never sent. Long ones, short ones, angry ones, sad ones. But something stopped me every time. Maybe it was because deep down, I knew he hadn't done it on purpose. He wasn't some evil mastermind trying to control me. He was just him, and I was me. And we'd both been trying to make something work that probably never really fit in the first place. The anger was actually helpful, though. It gave me energy. Instead of lying around feeling sorry for myself, I started doing stuff. I signed up for that yoga class. I called my friends and made plans. I bought that book series I'd been wanting to read. I even started going to this little coffee shop near my work that I'd always wanted to try but never did because he said their coffee was overpriced. Turns out it's amazing and worth every penny. But here's where things get really interesting. About 4 months after he left, I'm at this coffee shop and I overhear this couple arguing at the table next to me. Nothing dramatic, just this low-key bickering about where to go for dinner. The guy keeps shutting down everything the girl suggests. That place is too expensive. Their service is terrible. You know I don't like that kind of food. And she just keeps getting smaller and smaller, her voice getting quieter with each suggestion until she finally just says, "Whatever you want is fine." I'm watching this happen, and it's like seeing myself from the outside. That was me. That was us. I'd gotten so used to deferring to what he wanted that I'd forgotten I even had preferences. But sitting there, alone, drinking my overpriced coffee and reading my book, I realized something huge. I wasn't lonely anymore. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. For the first time since the breakup, I felt content. Not happy exactly, not yet, but content. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And that's when it hit me. He didn't leave me because I wasn't good enough. He left because we weren't good together. There's a massive difference. The next couple months were like watching myself come back to life. I started remembering who I was before him. The girl who'd stay up all night reading because the book was too good to put down. Who'd try new restaurants by herself because she was curious about the food. Who'd call her mom just to chat without worrying about someone in the background getting impatient. I rejoined my book club that I'd quit because the meetings conflicted with our standing date nights. I started painting again, something I'd given up because he said the smell of the paint gave him headaches. I even took a weekend trip by myself to this little mountain town I'd always wanted to visit. That trip was huge for me. I'd never traveled alone before, and honestly, I was scared. What if I got bored? What if it was weird eating dinner by myself? What if I had no one to share the experience with? But you know what happened? I had the best time. I hiked when I wanted to hike, ate when I was hungry, spent an entire afternoon in this tiny bookstore just browsing. No compromising, no checking if someone else was having fun, no worrying about anyone else's needs but my own. I felt free. Actually, genuinely free. That's when everything clicked. I wasn't missing him anymore. I was missing the idea of him. The security of having someone, the comfort of a routine, the safety of knowing what to expect. But the actual him? The person who made me feel like I had to ask permission to be myself? I didn't miss that at all. I started thinking about all the things I was doing now that I couldn't do when we were together. Not because he forbade me, but because I was so focused on being the girlfriend he wanted that I'd forgotten to be the person I actually was. I was sleeping better, eating foods I actually liked, watching shows that interested me, having conversations about topics I cared about. I was living my life instead of performing it. And here's the crazy part. I was attracting different people into my life. Better people. People who liked me for who I actually was, not who I thought I should be. My coworker started inviting me to these art shows downtown because she knew I was getting back into painting. My neighbor, who I'd barely talked to before, started stopping to chat because I wasn't always rushing off to meet him somewhere. It was like I'd been wearing this mask for 3 years, and taking it off let people see who I really was underneath. So that brings me to last night, when I wrote that thank you letter I mentioned at the beginning. I didn't send it, that's not the point. But I needed to acknowledge what his leaving had given me. It gave me myself back. I thanked him for showing me what it felt like to try to be someone else so I could recognize when I was doing it. I thanked him for leaving before I completely disappeared into what I thought he wanted. I thanked him for forcing me to remember that I'm actually pretty great on my own. Most of all, I thanked him for not coming back when I was begging the universe to make him change his mind. Because if he had, I never would have discovered who I am when I'm not trying to be perfect for someone else. The version of me that exists now is stronger, more confident, and more authentically me than I've been in years, maybe ever. And I never would have found her if he hadn't walked away. I'm not saying the pain wasn't real or that it didn't matter. Those first few months were brutal. I wouldn't wish that kind of heartbreak on anyone. But that pain led me somewhere I never expected to go. People keep asking me if I'm ready to date again. And honestly, I'm not sure. Not because I'm not over him, I definitely am. But because I'm really enjoying getting to know myself again. I've got my own routines now. I wake up on weekends and decide what I want to do based on how I'm feeling, not what someone else might want. I've got plans with friends, hobbies I'm excited about, goals that are just mine. When I do meet someone new, it's going to be as this version of myself, not the edited, smaller version I was before. And if they don't like the full me, the me who gets excited about weird documentaries and stays up too late reading and sometimes eats cereal for dinner, then they're not my person. I've learned that losing yourself in someone else isn't romantic. It's tragic, and I'm never doing that again. The right person will make me feel more like myself, not less. They'll encourage the parts of me that make me unique instead of making me feel like I need to hide them. If you're going through a breakup right now and you think your world is ending, I get it. I've been exactly where you are, and I know everyone keeps telling you that you'll be fine, that you're better off without them, all that stuff that makes you want to scream because it doesn't feel true yet. But here's what I wish someone had told me in those first awful weeks. This isn't just about getting over them. This is about getting back to you. The person you were before you started editing yourself to fit into their world. The person you forgot you could be because you were so busy being who you thought they wanted. That person is still in there, and they're amazing. They're waiting for you to remember them, to choose them, to stop trying to be someone else. Your ex leaving might feel like the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And right now, it probably is. But what if it's also the best thing? What if it's the universe's way of saying, hey, you're worth more than settling for someone who makes you smaller? I'm not going to lie and say I'm grateful for the pain. That would be crazy. But I am grateful for where the pain led me. I'm grateful for the strength I didn't know I had. I'm grateful for the self-respect I found buried under 3 years of trying to be perfect for the wrong person. Most of all, I'm grateful that I finally understand what it means to love yourself enough to not accept anything less than you deserve. So yeah, I thanked him for leaving me. Because sometimes the person who breaks your heart is actually setting you free. And if you're listening to this while you're still in the thick of it, still crying, still hoping they'll come back, just remember that 6 months from now, you might be writing your own thank you letter. Not because you're crazy, but because you finally realized that losing them meant finding yourself. And that's always worth celebrating. Trust me on this one. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more honest breakup stories. And remember, you're stronger than you know. Bye.